All right, we're back. It's COMP305. It's Game Programming 1. It's Week 8, Lesson 8, Part 3. And where we last got together, we talked about a bunch of stuff in Unity. Oh, look at this Microsoft error stuff. I love it when it errors out. Um, we did this FPS demo for Section 1, right? Which is what we were doing yesterday. This is Section 1. I'm pretty sure it is. Section 1. All right. And yeah, that's right. So that was what we kind of were doing last time, and I built a game level. Did you guys see all the game levels? Were you there watching it? I'm not sure if you guys looked at it from remote, but I built a game level and everything else. We're going to get into that in a second. I'm just going to launch Unity just to get ready, right? Because we're going to get into that more of the nitty gritty around that. That's what our game level looks like right now. It's pretty cool as a starting level. But I want to talk about administration a little bit right now because there's some administration I need to get into in terms of our stuff, right? One of the things is, for the most part, Section 1, people in Section 1, this section did fairly well, like I said last time in the exam, people who did it, right? Actually did pretty good. It was, fairly straightforward. There's some people who kind of missed the mark on some of the stuff that we were doing. But that's okay because you have a chance to make it up with your the stuff we're going to be talking about today, right? Let's take a look at assignment 3, which is I want to kind of try to talk about the next several assignments and piece parts to everything, right, over the next few weeks. So right now we're sitting at week 8. We have, including this week, 7 weeks to go, right, to complete the semester, right, which is going to take us to December 18th. It seems like it's a long way away, and there's no snow outside. It's not even that cold, right? But it's really around the corner, right? So let's talk about this. So first is your first the thing we're building first, which is assignment 3. Okay, assignment 3 is going to be based off, what are we doing? We're doing a simple 3D game that we're going to build. It's due November 20th, so not next week, but the week after, right? So it'll be week 10, right? So this should actually say due week 10, right, at midnight. And it follows the same pattern that we've done for our first 2 games, right? So our first game was a shooter, 2D shooter. Second game was a 2D platformer. Third game is where it gets a little bit different. You can do a 3D game. I'm not going to tell you what type to make. You can make your own 3D game. You can make it a platformer. You can make it space game. You can make it whatever kind of 3D game you want to do. You can make it so that it's a first-person kind of type of game or a third-person perspective. But it's got to be a perspective game. It can't be an ISO game. Okay, so you can't make a 3D ISO game. That's not what I'm asking for here. It's got to be a perspective game. Okay. You must have enemies for the player to avoid and or destroy. We're going to talk about both options. For example, let's say you don't want to make a really destructive game. You want to make a game where you kind of get around an enemy before the enemy gets to you, kind of thing. We'll talk about that. Then there's got to be a scoring system just like normal. And you must use your own graphic and sound assets as normal. Everything's the same. The only difference is that when you have a gameplay scene with WSAD for player movement, optional mouse control for first-person perspective option. The reason for that is because you may need to do a kind of a mouse look. One thing that you can also do is you can definitely use the scripts from your standard assets for player movement. And the reason why I'm allowing that this time around is because it's quite complex, the script. If you haven't done it before, you can certainly set it up on your own if you don't like the current script that's included in the game. But I'm not going to make you make the script for first-person shooter only because we don't have a lot of time. Not because I don't want you to do it. You certainly could write your own, and there's lots to learn from it. But you can use the one that I'm going to be showing you, which is part of our game. Okay, computer control of, or simple AI, of the enemies. How can this work? Well, you can make it so that you have some obstacles that move in a particular pattern, right? So they're always moving. You can make sure that they have a special movement pattern where they bounce around. They can appear on different parts of your level, right? And for this one, I'm only asking for one level. One level. So when you get out at the end of the level, it's the end of the game. You get a certain number of points. You could get points for killing, surviving, picking up pickups before the enemies get to you. There's all kinds of ways to make this go. I'm not going to give you too many details about how this is going to happen, but you need to have some kind of scoring system, some way to win. Okay, so the same as we did with the last two games. So there's nothing like that you haven't seen before. I'm not, from a structure perspective, I think it's fairly straightforward, right? I don't think there's anything new. In terms of gameplay screen, life counter, all that kind of stuff, internal documentation, external documentation, all that stuff is exactly the same, and it's exactly the same points. Some other additional options you might have, for example, you may want to add a procedural 3D map generation for extra points, and I'm going to be talking about how to do that, how to create like random maps with, based on the little tile we're making. But you can make your own algorithm for making a random map and so on, because I want you to make your own game. I don't want you to necessarily make a maze game, even though I'm going to be kind of talking about how to create a maze, a 3D maze, or whatever. You may want to make a game with a terrain, and I'm going to be talking over the next little while, in the next weeks, the rest of the semester pretty much, we're going to be talking about 3D, right? So I've kind of devoted the first part of the semester for 2D, and now this second half of the semester is all 3D. So we're going to be talking about terrain, we're going to be talking about Blender, we might talk a little bit about Maya and 3D Studio Max, depending on how we get time for this kind of stuff. We'll be talking about generating things like sound effects and muzzle flashes and particle effects and all this kind of stuff that we're going to add into your game to make your final game awesome, right? But we're going to continue to move through that week over week. So this week I'm going to try and get this first-person stuff completely banged out so you have everything kind of going. And at least the beginning of your game you should start sketching out. But more or less, this is the outline for your assignment number 3. Again, this one's due 2 weeks from now, week 10, November 20th at midnight. Questions around this one for you guys? No? All right. Again, very straightforward. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be questions as we get closer. Okay, so I kind of outlined. I want to try and outline as much as I can. So we trudge along. We get to week 10, and normally I would give you this final project at week 10, but I want to give you 2 now, right? So at least you have an awareness of what's coming, right? And this way you can plan accordingly, so there's no surprises for the rest of the semester. You know what's coming, okay? So here's the final project. Okay, now this is heavy duty, so kind of sit tight. All right, this one's worth 30% combined. Remember, I said there's no final exam. So this takes the place of your final exam. It's kind of broken down into a couple parts. So part 1 is worth 10%, right? And it's your first draft of your external game document and 1 working level. And that's due week 12, which is Friday, December the 4th at midnight. And then your final version is due, part 2, which is due worth 20%, the balance of this project, right? Which is due week 14, right? That's Friday, December 18th at midnight. Okay, so the last day of classes here at Centennial, right? It's the single-player Unity game. So what that means is, I labeled it this way, so you can make any game you want, pretty much. 2D, 3D, combination of 2D, 3D. Again, it can be a scrolling game, a platform game, tower defense, first-person shooter, third-person adventure, whatever. Get approval, right? So if you have a weird idea, like something we haven't done before, or you want to combine different aspects of games, shoot it by me, because I really need to approve it before you start building. And that's what this first game concept assignment is really all about. Let me take a look and see what you're putting out there. I want to see it, I want to approve it, and then you can move on to the second phase, right? Why? Because if you're really going down a bad road and kind of in going down the wrong direction, you still got a couple weeks to fix it at this point, right? If I wait until the last week, then you're in trouble, right? Then you get trouble, and maybe you wouldn't start until the last day. That's what happens with some people. They don't start until the last day. Like they think, oh, I can do this. I can knock this off in a week. I got me, my partner, and then your exams come and hit you over the head, and you're done, right? So this is a bad thing. So I've kind of changed this up a little bit for this game. All right. We'll also be doing a final presentation, right? So this is not part of this sequence, part 1, part 2. Your final presentation is a little separate, and the reason why I made it separate completely from this one is, although it depends on these 2, and I probably could have made part 1, part 2, part 3, I didn't want to make the final project more than 30%, right? Really, at the end of the day, your final project, your presentation, is worth a combined 40% of your final mark, which means it's like an exam and an assignment together. Right? The presentation piece is, some people hate presenting. They're not great at it. They don't like doing it, right? So I want you to do a couple things. We'll talk about the presentation piece, but you can either do a presentation that's live and or a screencast, but you got to be ready for both. So you got to actually have recorded your stuff done a run through of your presentation with your partner, right? And all that kind of stuff. And as we get closer, I've outlined what I'm requiring. Okay, so like it says here, please keep in mind that the final presentation, which will be used in place of a final exam, is worth 10% of your final mark and is dependent on the project working and being completed on time. So that last day, or that last week, so both days, day 1, day 2, all I'll be doing during those 2 days is presentations. So, it'll be a good opportunity for us to see each other's work, take a look and see what you've produced by the end, and then I can give you my critique, and you have a little bit of time to fix a couple, maybe a couple days to do some fine tuning before it's due, which is the Friday. So I see you on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then by Friday you kind of hand it in and everything's good to go, right? So that's really what you're building. You're building, in a nutshell, any game you can feel like doing. The only thing I will not accept, all right, is a puzzle game. So no puzzle games. Don't make things like some kind of, game where you try and figure stuff out or whatever. It's not acceptable. And the reason why is because it's way too complex. You can get into some really deep trouble, and you may not even produce anything if you get right into the bones of a puzzle game. Keep it simple. Make sure you go into the style that you've already learned how to do. We've already talked about 2 games. We're talking about a third one now, third style of game. This first-person perspective, third-person perspective. I'm going to go over that as well, with terrain and different things that we're going to be generating, right? So keep it simple. Keep it with these things. Have a score. Have your your assets. Build up these things that you've been building up, so you can have a pretty good portfolio for the end, right? That's what this thing is all about. This is not about trying to make a game that's undoable or uncompletable by the end, right? And that's why I say no puzzle games, because puzzle games, there's good and bad things about them. They can kind of run you into a black hole and you'll never come out, right? So, because it's challenging. And sometimes they're too much and sometimes they're not enough, like they're too simple. So, it's not apples to apples. I want to kind of compare apples to apples with you guys. That's why puzzle games are out. Maybe I could have done another example assignment that was a puzzle game, like some kind of like 3D puzzle game where you click on the UI and all that kind of stuff. No time for that. Okay, so the game must have a menu scene, an instruction scene, and at least 3 game level scenes. All right, so it has to have 3 game levels instead of 1 level that you've been doing so far. I mean, you're going to be working with a partner. This is going to be an extended time. You've got 4 weeks to do this thing. You need 3 game levels. All right, which means it's not going to be easy, medium, hard like I've done in the past. This is going to be level 1, level 2, level 3. All levels are going to be completely different, right? They're not going to be looking the same as on other levels, which means you need to do some level design in terms of the the stuff you're going to find, the look and feel of the level, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's going to feel like 3 distinct levels, and this is where you and your partner, and I highly recommend you partner with somebody on this one, because there's a lot of little piece parts, moving parts that you have to take care of. And it's a good example of what we do in the game industry, where we never work alone. Like in general, when you want to produce something, you want to work with somebody else, right? So I'll accept a team of 1 or 2 in this particular case. I know people in the past have made a case for 3. There's just not enough to do for 3, and sometimes the third person is like the third wheel, right? So that's why I'm not recommending we go higher than a team of 2, right? And also there's this third person, what do they do, right? The first person, they might have a couple of ideas. Once you get the third person in play, it's almost like, they slow you down rather than go forward sometimes, at least for this project. Okay, so we've got those 2 things. A scoring system must be included. You must acquire and or use your own graphic and sound assets. And again, using assets from the Unity store is totally acceptable. Note, you may use the output from an assignment from either team member as a starter template. Okay, so that means that, okay, you've been working on this, like assignment number 1, we did a shooter, assignment number 2, we did platform, assignment number 3, we're doing a first-person shooter or third-person perspective kind of thing. You can use any one of those from either team member to start off with. So let's say you really love doing this third-person shooter kind of thing, or first-person shooter, and you want to start with that one as your first level. You can do that, and you can kind of bring that out, tweak it a little bit for the first for part 1, and then present it as this is where we want to go. We want to kind of expand the one we did from level 1. We want to use the games, all the information we got from our assignment number 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, to make our first level, right? Here's what I don't want you to do for this assignment. I don't want you to combine assignment 1, 2, and 3 and make it your final assignment. That would be bad, okay? I would not accept that. So don't sit there and go, well, you know, my game, it's really cool. It starts off as a scroller, and then it goes into a platformer, and then the guy lands, and then he becomes a first-person, like, three-dimensional guy, and then it's not, I don't buy it, guys. No game is like that, and, you know, it's probably not going to be fun, and it's all different. Keep it consistent, make it one, right? And then start off with one of your games as a template and add a couple more levels. It's not that difficult, you know, if you think about it, especially if you're able to start with a template you've already done. So think about, you know, one of the games you've already made or you're going to make, and then now you're going to take it further. You're going to make it, you know, so that it's almost like a completed game. This is one of these games that if you really work hard on it over the next 4 weeks, you know, kind of stuff from week 10, now you actually have 6 weeks, right? Because I'm giving you to week 8, right? So keep in mind, you're doing your first-person shooter. This could be, maybe if the first-person shooter or first-person perspective is the game for you, keep working on it. Build it in mind that you're going to use this one or another one that you've made already as the final project. Okay, so some of the details here are things you've seen before, right? Example is the menu scene. There's going to be a separate instruction scene for this one, right? So I want a menu scene that gives you kind of, gets the player ready and then displays at least 3 options: play, instructions, and exit. Those are the 3 options in your menu. And then you're going to have your instruction scene that gives you instructions on how to play the game, your game scenes where all the fun happens, right, with your 3 game levels, and each game level must appear and function differently than other game levels, like I said, right? A game over scene, player control of an avatar, computer controlled enemies, random opportunities to generate points, scoring system, all that stuff that we've normally seen, a life counter, health status, sound effects, and a mandatory game soundtrack for this one. So this one I'm asking you to put together a soundtrack, get one, ask Jay to make one, whatever. You know, so that way, you know, you have almost like a fully functional game. Include internal documentation, external documentation. One thing you notice that's missing from here is GitHub. I'm not asking you to submit your GitHub for this one. The reason why is GitHub is only going to be required as a submission because you've already done GitHub for, you know, assignment 1, 2, 3. By then I'm figuring, you know, you're going to be using GitHub all the time, right? And if you work with a partner, I'm going to require it. It's required for you to work with a partner. If you're working with a partner, I want to see your GitHub. If you don't submit your GitHub, it's going to go against you, right? And we're going to talk about this. So some optional game features: final boss monster, same kind of idea, mini game in the main game, some kind of disarm a bomb, pick a lock, all this kind of stuff. Empower the player to get an NPC. Make it possible for the player to save, pause, load his game, all that kind of stuff. There's other things you can think about to add in here, but this whole thing is worth 66 points or 30%. And again, there's 2 parts. One part is due the week 12, so Friday, December 4th, and the next part is due week 14, Friday, December 18th. Now there'll be no extensions on these things because I'm going to be very tight over the next little while in terms of getting this done, especially when there's 40% of your mark on the line. So that's where a bulk of what's happening is going to happen on the second half. Okay, I'm not going to do an exam, but week 11, so in a few weeks, right now we're sitting at week 8, I'm going to hold a quiz, similar to what we did in week 5 when we did that kind of multiple choice true-false quiz. It's going to be detailing things like about 3D. I'm going to quiz you on some minor things. I may have a little practical piece to it. I'll see how it goes, right? But that's going to come around week 10, and it's going to be worth about 7.5%, right, of your final grade, which will make it up to your total 100% by the end. So you've already got 2.5% for your GitHub link, and there's 7.5% left for the quiz. Plus, you know, it'll be enough in week 11 to get that done.
Covers the Blender as well?
Sorry?
The quiz, like you're going to cover the Blender?
Blender? In the quiz. They'll be asking you some questions, yeah. So things around how to do different things. I mean, things that if I've talked about it in class and I'm asking you how to do stuff, right? I may have to cover it. I may say, hey, do this, or ask, you know, how do you do that, or tell me what this is. What's a material? What's a shader? What's what do I mean when I talk about a texture? How do I do UV unwrapping in Blender? You know, those kind of things. I'm going to talk more about those things on the quiz, and those things I'm going to hit week 11. So it's a few weeks out from now. Okay, and again, that's about 7.5% of your final grade, right? Finally, week 14, you're going to have your presentation, right? So after everything is done, you're pretty much done. You should be pretty much finished by week 14 anyway. It's just finishing touches by then. I'm going to go back to week 12 and 13 in a second. Let's take a look at your final presentation and the requirements. All right, so every document tells you what you need, right? So this is due, even though it says due week 14 by the Friday, it's actually, the presentation itself is due by the time that you're in class. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we're in class together for this thing, right? So again, working with a partner or on your own, you'll present your final game project. Your presentation should include details contained in your external documents, such as an overview of your game, your planning process, lessons learned, future possibilities. You must be prepared to present live and produce a screencast. So you have to do both. Screencast, you should put your screencast somewhere like on YouTube, Vimeo, Twitch, whatever you want to have it, and a link to it. Please don't give me a 300 meg file. That would be like not good. All right. Someone have done that in the past. I've gotten like a 300 meg file in my email. Right? I don't know how they did that. Right. Anyways, and it didn't bounce somehow. Use a slide deck during your presentation to keep you organized. Okay. Your presentation should be no longer than 5 minutes. 5 minutes. There's like 50 people on this in these two groups, right? So if everyone takes like 5 minutes, we should be able to get through it all. Traditionally, this is what happens. You take 5 minutes, and then people start talking about stuff. Hey, I didn't like this, and when did you do this, and blah, blah, blah. We're going to have a couple minutes of discussion for each person. That's 7 minutes per person. If there's 20 people in this class, plus another 40 people in the other class, it's a lot of minutes, right? We're going to be able to take both days on week 14 to do that. This is in place of your exam, so this is mandatory. Now, there might be a chance that we can't get through it all because of whatever, and that's why I'm asking you as a backup, because I'm going to look at this stuff again when I mark you, right? Do a screencast. So run through it one time, right? So, and the screencast is going to be like 5 minutes. We're not talking about like a huge screencast. Make your PowerPoint presentation anyway, right? And all I want you to do is go through it and talk yourself through it. Do a little bit of demo on the game. That's part of the presentation. 2 minutes we're talking about, like very, very small. And then we're gonna be able to see the game and be awed by your greatness, right? Because you're gonna be awesome at making your final game with your partner. Sometimes they're so odd, and this is where the screencast comes into play. We talk about it and we say, wow, that was really cool, and I really like this and this and this. Here's the problem. What if you're not ready to present? And this is what happens, and this is where I present the screencast option, right? People are late. That's just, it'd be great if everyone was on time, and if I was a real stickler for time frames, which I'm not, I would just say, if you're not ready, get 0, right? Like that's the way, people have done it in the past. It's effective in that, you have to get it done, and if you're not ready, you're out of luck. On the downside, I'd like sometimes, there's a lot of stuff going on around that last week of school. You've got exams, you've got prep for other projects, you've got other stuff, and traditionally what ends up happening is people don't show up, all right? So they do a screencast instead. Please try and show up. It's a really good thing for everyone to give you a critique on your game, especially if this is what you want to do in your life. If you want to be a game designer, developer, right, you want feedback. You want people to talk about your game and say, hey, you know what, Selena, I really like this or that in your game. And, I thought you could have done a little bit different things here and added this or subtracted that, and then it would have been different. And then take that, and then by the Friday, you can take those little tweaks, little fine-tuning things, and adjust your game. Your final submission is due on the Friday. So you can take what feedback we're giving you and then go forward. So this is part of that thing we talk about. Predrag talks about, our chair. He talks about other things, ancillary things that we kind of hit aside from just programming and everything else. Your game document, you got to learn how to write. Your presentation, you're going to learn how to talk, all right? There's other stuff that we do in this course other than just game, right? It's about other stuff. Here's where I want to take it. If I can get the first 2 segments of what we're doing, example would be your first part of your class. I want to kind of hit the people that are ready. And remember, there's going to be teams of people. So if we're all good, there might be not that many presentations. I would like to fit in on the Monday and Tuesday of that time frame. So Monday's class, which would be in the week of December 18th. Let me just go to that for a second so we can take a look at that. Let's look at the calendar for a second. So December 18th, the Monday of December 18th, is December 14th here. That Monday and December the 15th, the Tuesday, if you guys are ready to present during those 2 time frames, right? So let's say, on the Monday, on the 14th, right? You have like 4 days to kind of do things. If everyone presents on day 1. So what do we do day 2, right? We game, baby, we game, right? we'll have a bit of a LAN party, right, where we play kind of a first-person shooter together, right, for those last 2 games, right, last 2 days. And some people may decide not to show up because they have other things going on, exams, things to study for, or whatever. But I'd like to try and hit, if we can, all the presentations on day 1, if we can. Chances are, I know what's going to happen. We're not ever going to be able to do that, and there's no game time. So by the time we hit like week, December 16th, everyone's going to be worried about other stuff and won't have a chance to do anything. I'd like that not to be true, but chances are that's what ends up happening in our with our program, right? So it's kind of some wishful thinking on my part. So that's what the presentation is all about. If you look it through here, it asks you for a slide deck. So it doesn't say, hey, just present whatever you feel like in whatever order you want. It doesn't say that. It says, hey, you got to present some slides here. Now you can use whatever slide deck type you want. Keynote, PowerPoint, whatever the thing is from Google or whatever, Prezi, whatever you want to use as your backup for your slide deck. It's cool. You can make your own slide deck if you're really that inclined. Whatever. It's got to be some pages that talk about these things. So you need a title page with a team logo on it and a screencast of your game, like a screenshot of your game. What does it look like? Maybe with a background. You include a planning slide, right? And an overview slide. Overview slide is like, hey, this is what my game is about, right? My planning slide is like, this is what we did. This is how I came up with this idea. And here's some wireframes of our initial plan for the game. And this kind of stuff. And here's how we generated our ideas and how we sketched out our code requirements and stuff like that, right? You will include an instruction slide on how the game is played, right? And then demonstrate your game. Do a demo, like, and demo every screen. Do a little bit of a demo on your start menu, your instructions, your gameplay, your game over. Do, all your gameplay scenes, all that stuff. And then you will include a lessons learned slide. Say, so this is what I learned. Here's the things that worked well. Here's the things that didn't work well. And then your final one is your future possibilities. What would I do if I had more time? What would I do if I could take this further? If I had a different partner, if I started earlier, because here are the major things. I wish I started earlier. That's the main thing the feedback that I'm getting back every single time I do this kind of projects, game projects. I wish I started earlier, right? Everyone says it. Yeah, if I had more time. You have lots of time. It's week 8. It's not like you don't have time. You can do it if you plan things properly. You can get your final game done, and it'll look pretty good. It'll be part of your portfolio, and it'll be good from an interview perspective. This is what I came out with from Centennial, right? In Game Programming 1. And it's a good segue, right, when it comes to conversation in an interview, because you can say, look, yeah, I want to be a game developer, but yeah, guess what? I made games, a few games in Unity, and the final one, I did this one with a partner, right? So that's really what this presentation is all about. Again, it's worth 10% for a total of 40. 10 for the first planning piece, 20 for the finished product, and 10 for this one, which is the final presentation where you're presenting your game. And then 7.5% for your quiz, which is week 11. 10% for the one I just gave you. So the majority of your marks are now. Like, this is where it's all coming down, right? The first part was all prep and try and get you ready. Any questions or concerns around this? Anybody? So this is our plan in a nutshell. I wanted to kind of present it to you so you understand where we're going with this thing. A lot of people, when I present things in order, like if I wait, and if I gave you this stuff, your final project, I feel in week 10, not that it's too late. It's like almost as if, most people, they sometimes they won't be finished with their assignment 3. They're going to be worried about other stuff. I want to give it to you now before you start assignment 3, so you have it in your mind how to plan, so you can plan out your game. So what's going on in week 12 and week 13? Well, just like I said in our syllabus the last time, I kind of pulled up this little kind of course plan, if you will. Week 12 and week 13, we're going to have them as work weeks. Okay, so I'm not going to actually teach new material there necessarily on those 2 weeks. It's purely going to be work weeks where we actually do. You guys are physically in class. I still require you to come to class. There's not canceled classes during those weeks. You come to class and we work your bugs out, right? So you sit there and work. That'll give you, think about that. That's 8 hours I'm giving you to work on your assignment in class, all right? Now here's what traditionally happens. No one shows up, right? Because they're like, meh, I work better at home. Meh, I don't want to work in class. Meh, I have this project to work on, assignment, exam, test, whatever I have to study for. And what ends up happening is you mess yourself up. These hours are required think about the requirements for this project, how long it'll take you to complete. It's not 10 hours. It's not 20 hours. I guarantee you this project, if you want to get full marks, is going to be at least 30 hours, right, to make this go. 30 hours over the next course of weeks. We're talking about over a 4-week program, right, is 10 hours per week, right, to make it, to slog through to make it done, right? And I'm estimating, it's a big estimate, 40 hours. It sounds like a lot, but it's 40 hours between 2 people. So it's not like it's undoable. Now, some people will choose to do it on their own, right? And that's fine. I mean, some people work alone. They don't like working with other people. Highly recommend you don't do that for this one, like I said. 40 hours, it's going to be challenging for you to do on your own, and you won't have as nice of a, as a polished product as you would if you work with somebody else. All right, so pick somebody. Someone that you know that's going to work, that's not a dog, that's not going to kind of ride on your coattails if you're a really good worker, right? Someone who's that you partner with before, that you know can produce just like you and has the same dedication, right? If you don't do that, and if you work with somebody who doesn't want to work, or who doesn't know how to code, or doesn't know how this technology works or whatever, it's just going to mess you up, and you might as well work on your own. All right, any other questions around these things? So I've talked about, just a recap while I wrap up this particular video. So recap, assignment 3 is due 2 weeks from now. That's so we're sitting at week 8, assignment 3 is due week 10. Your final project, right? I've given it to you already, right? It's due, the first part is due week 12, the last part is due week 14, the presentation is due week 14, all right? That's worth 40% of your mark, right? So you've got all this on your eCentennial, right? Your quiz is coming, week 11, 7.5%, all right? That's coming up. So there's a few things that I've given you just to organize yourself so you know what's coming in the course, and you can organize yourself so you can be successful, right? Okay, before I end this video, any questions or concerns, please let me know now, right? Because if you don't know how to do this, if you're concerned about this, it sounds like a lot, but I'm giving you to it in advance so that way you can deal with it. Again, highly recommend don't conquer this final project on your own. Work with somebody else. It's going to be easier for you, right? Okay. Enough said about this. We'll take a 5-minute breather. We're going to take a little early break today at 5:06, right? And then we'll come back in 5 minutes after everyone's had their cigarettes, your vitamins, whatever, you're dancing, right? And then once you come back, we'll get back into this first-person shooter final piece of the demo for this week, okay?